So here we're going to look at a couple of very similar looking examples involving punctuation and however. I want to emphasize that with these kinds of questions, we're talking about something very different than we would be with this kind of question. With this kind of question, it's all about the meaning of the transition word, the right transition word to connect the meanings of the two sentences. Here, it's all about placing the word however, or whatever other transition word they might employ in a question like this, placing it in the right clause so that you're connecting the ideas in a way that makes sense. And so looking at this one here, it says, historians have referred to Virginia Woolf as the mother of modernist fiction, a label that has been widely used in literary analysis since the mid-20th century. Woolf herself questioned the mother title, however, believing that it downplayed her contributions to the development of stream of consciousness narrative techniques, which she considered central to her literary legacy. Okay, and so what I'm going to recommend for this type of question is to start with the sentence containing the blank and determine how many independent clauses it contains. How many independent clauses in the sentence with the blank? Okay, so we're not even going to worry about that first sentence to begin with. We'll come back to it when we get to step 2. But as we look at this sentence here, how many independent clauses do we have? Well, we definitely have one. Woolf herself questioned the mother title. Okay, and so all of the answer choices include that word title, and that's definitely an independent clause. But on the other side of however, we have, well, what do we have? Believing that it downplayed her contributions to the development of stream of consciousness narrative techniques, which she considered central to her literary legacy. That's a lot of words. It's a lengthy stretch of words, but it is not an independent clause. On its own, that would be a fragment. It would be a sentence fragment. It doesn't really matter if it's a dependent clause or a phrase. It does happen to be a phrase, but that's a distinction that we don't need to worry about here. The important thing is that we have an independent clause and then something that is not an independent clause. The fact that we only have one independent clause means that we don't want to use the semicolon. So it is on that basis that we can get rid of B and D. Again, one independent clause means we don't want the semicolon. Okay, and that would have also held true for a period, if a period had been included in one of those answer choices. Okay, so one independent clause, so no semicolon. Okay, now at this point, well, the usual step 2 to figure out where the contrast is actually not going to be necessary because this is just not something you're going to see in a correct answer. We can elaborate on that, but I'll just mention another video where I talk about 3 main types of transition words, and you can see more on that topic in that video. So C is going to have to be our correct answer here. It's signaling that we have a contrast between what I'll call the blue portion here and the red portion. They've referred to her as the mother of modernist fiction, but she herself questioned that title. Okay, and so what I want to emphasize here is that we could have just as easily put the however at the beginning of this sentence. I mean, it would have totally changed the question and made it a lot easier. But if it had said, however, Woolf herself questioned the moniker, the title, okay, that would have worked. They could have also said something like, Woolf herself, however, questioned the mother title, and so on and so forth. But the important thing here for this example is really that the fact that there's just a single independent clause in that sentence means that we don't want the ones with the semicolons. And then again, you're not going to have comma, however, without another comma after it. Okay, now this one is a little bit different. Okay, so in 1921, this botanist traveled to the Dutch colony of Suriname in South America to study the local flora and fauna, and her observations would later be published in a groundbreaking work. Marion didn't make her discoveries single-handedly, however. She collaborated with local experts and indigenous people to gather information and share insights. Okay, so again, we're going to start with that second sentence and ask how many independent clauses does it contain? Okay, so certainly it starts with an independent clause there. She didn't make her discoveries single-handedly. But we also have a second independent clause after our transition word. She collaborated with local experts and indigenous people to gather information and share insights. Okay, so in this case, the fact that we have two independent clauses means that we do need the semicolon or period. And apologies for the handwriting there. So notice here that A has a semicolon, B does not, so we can't use that. D doesn't have any punctuation, so we can't use that. So it's down to A versus C. And so here's where that second step comes in, where we want to figure out where the contrast is. Again, if it wasn't a contrast word, we would say where the whatever is, whatever kind of transition we were dealing with. Okay, so in this case, we're going to go back to the first sentence and read it, and again, really focus on the flow of ideas, the relationship between the ideas being expressed here. So the first sentence is making a point, saying that she did all this stuff that would lead to the publication of a groundbreaking work. The second sentence is saying, but she didn't do that single-handedly. She also had help from these other people. Okay, so the contrast here is between the blue and the red. Okay, so what does that mean? This is the important thing here. It means that we need our contrast word to be on the left side of our hard punctuation mark, whether that punctuation mark was a semicolon or a period. Okay, so our answer here is going to be A. C would signal something different. C would signal that we had a contrast between the red part and the yellow part. I'll read it with that emphasis. She didn't make her discoveries single-handedly. However, she collaborated with local experts. Okay, that's not what we want. Again, because the yellow part is adding on to the red part. It's not contrasting with it. Here, what I want to emphasize is that they could have placed the word however at a couple of other points, and it would have still conveyed the same relationship, between the parts. If they had said, however, she didn't make her discoveries single-handedly, that would have worked just as well. They could have also said, she did not, however, make her discoveries single-handedly. So that would have also worked. Again, that's kind of what I was alluding to here by saying, they could have put this at a couple of other points. What we can't do to bring back answer choice B is we can't join two independent clauses like the red part and the yellow part here with comma, however, comma. That doesn't work. And so that's the big difference between this question and this question. This one only has one independent clause in the sentence with the blank, so we don't want the semicolon or a period. This one has two independent clauses, so we do need the semicolon or period. And then again, once we've sorted that out, then it's a matter of figuring out where the transition, in this case the contrast, is, and that's how you decide between, in this case, A and C. So in subsequent videos, I will go over some related questions that use different transition words, whether it be rather or though or some other ones. But what we're going to see is that this two-step process of first figuring out how many independent clauses we have in the sentence with the blank, and then second figuring out where the transition is, that's going to be a reliable way to approach these questions regardless of which transition word is being employed.